What's up, Grace Point students? What's up, Grace Point students? It's me, Chris, here again. We're here for our week 2 of our series called Origin Story. And yes, I'm wearing my Batman shirt, and yes, I just did a Batman voice. Sorry. I'm Marvel all the way except for Batman. Batman's always been my favorite superhero. It's just the way it is, so bear with me. Listen, we're here and we're talking about heroes. And so last week we talked about the fact that heroes embrace who God created them to be. And the truth is that all of us are created in the image of God. Doesn't matter where we come from, what our background is, all of us, all of humanity is created in the image of God, and God has gifted all of us completely differently. We all have different personalities and giftings and missions in life, and the truth is that's what makes the church so great, is that it's made up of all of these people from all across history and the world who all look different and act different, but they're all about one thing, and that's telling people about Jesus. That's our mission, is spreading the love of Jesus across the world. And we can only do that because all of us are so unique and because only you can do the job that God has created for you to do. That's what it says in Ephesians 2:10, right? That he's prepared good works in advance that you might walk in them. He's talking about you. And your works are different than my works because that's just how God has created us uniquely. So let's continue our story about superheroes, our conversation about superheroes. So if I were to ask you, what is the purpose of a superhero? What do they do? You might say, well, Chris, you know what? They chase these villains who have completely outlandish costumes. I mean, have you seen the Joker? The dude wears like a purple suit and he's got crazy makeup and he's just insane, right? Or maybe you go, Chris, superheroes wear really tight clothes. Yes, like who's the costume designer behind this, right? So they wear incredibly tight clothes with capes and masks and gloves and all these things to conceal their identity, and they have a lot of gadgets. Yes, that's what superheroes are as well. And Chris, have you ever noticed that always, pretty much in every superhero movie, like public property is getting destroyed? Did you just see Iron Man get punched through that building and it fall to the ground? Yes. Like who pays for that? Does the city have to cover that? Does Tony Stark cover that? Does S.H.I.E.L.D. cover that? Is there some like liability that somebody else has signed for that covers it? Like, I don't know. That's just, if you can tell me that, if you can find that out and let me know, might be a prize in it for you. But at the end of the day, none of those things are really what superheroes are about. They're not about their villains. They're not about their clothes they wear. They're not about the buildings they destroy. Here's what superheroes are about. Superheroes are about helping people. Right? That's their mission. Their mission is to help people, whether it's protecting this person from a burning building or it's saving this city from an evil villain who's trying to destroy and corrupt the government. This is what superheroes do. They help people. And I think when we look at the Bible and we look at the story of Jesus, man, there is no greater hero in all of history than Jesus. And we see that his primary purpose is to save his people. Because his people have been separated from God, they've been attacked by an enemy whose name is Satan, and Jesus is on a mission to rescue them and reconcile them and reunite them with the Father and with himself. And so I want us to look at the story in just a second. And so I want you to think about, when you think about Jesus saving people, there's probably one thing that comes to mind as the primary thing that saves us all, and that's his death on the cross. And on the night before that happens, Jesus has this interaction with his disciples that's really odd. And it's really unique, and I want you to look at it with me. So if you have your Bibles, turn into John chapter 13, starting in verse 1. Okay, it says this. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. And this is where it gets interesting. He laid aside his outer garments and taking a towel, he tied it around its waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? And Jesus answered him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no share with me. And so Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, the one who is bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not every one of you. For he knew who was to betray him. That is why he said, not all of you are clean. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? Do you know what all this means? Verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is no greater than his master, nor is a master greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. All right, so this is a pretty revolutionary story for two reasons. First of all, how many of you have ever washed anyone else's feet? Okay? Maybe a few of you, right, in church services. I've done it a couple times at churches that I've been at before in the past. It is not a normal thing to wash someone else's feet, right? In this day especially, this job was only reserved for the servants and the lowest of the low. And so Jesus does something drastic here by taking off his outer garment and wrapping a towel around his waist and washing his disciples' feet. Like these are men's feet that would have been disgusting, right? They weren't wearing Yeezys, they weren't wearing Air Force Ones, they weren't wearing Nikes or Adidas or something from Walmart. It doesn't matter what kind of shoe, they weren't wearing sneakers, right? They're like legit Chacos, okay? So if you've been to Snowbird, you know at the end of the day, if you've worn Chacos or some other sort of sandal, your feet are disgusting, right? Because you've walked through camp, you've been in the creek, you've gotten dirt on them. That's just how it is. Now imagine if camp was full of animal feces and urine. This is what the streets of the cities that they walked in looked like, right? Because there were animals in the streets and they didn't go to the bathroom somewhere. They just went wherever they were. And so people had been walking through this filth and it was just nasty and gross, which is why this is one of the lowest jobs of a servant. But Jesus takes up this job willingly and washes his disciples' feet. Not only that, but this is not just a friend washing his friend's feet. This is a master or a rabbi washing the feet of his followers. So imagine it this way. Imagine you go to your job if you have one, or you go to school in August, and the very first thing when you get into class and you sit down in class, your teacher says, hey, I want you to come forward, so-and-so, I'm going to wash your feet. Or you go to work and your boss says, hey, I want you to come in here, we're going to wash your feet. And you're like, but you're my boss. Like, you're my teacher. That just is weird, right? I mean, we would all say that's weird. It's weird to wash anybody else's feet. Like, let's just go ahead and admit that first off. But it's also weird for someone in authority above you to wash your feet. Your teacher, your boss. It's just weird. If anything, it should be the other way around, right? We feel like we owe them something. And so some of you are going, no, I'm never washing my teacher's feet. I understand that. It's just for a point, right? So the point is, that's just not something a teacher or a rabbi or someone in authority would do for someone under them. And that's why Jesus says that at the end. In verse 16, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is no greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. You see, Jesus washing his disciples' feet was a signal to them that they are to submit themselves to other people and to serve other people. It doesn't matter what their background is. It doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter what their authority level is, how great or how small. They are to serve their neighbors. And he goes on to say towards the end of chapter 13, in verse 34 and 35, he says this, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. All right, you want people to know that you love Jesus and that you're a follower of Jesus. How do you do that? You don't do that by your social media posts. You don't do that by the videos that you create and throw on TikTok. You do that by loving people. It's right there in black and white. It says, Jesus says, love one another just as I have loved you. And at the end of the day, How did Jesus love us? Well, he loved us unconditionally because it says in Scripture that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Well, Chris, what does that mean? It means we had not done anything to earn the love of God. We had not done anything to earn the love of Jesus. We were not moderately good people who had made some bad decisions in the past. We were wicked people who were dead in our sin, who needed to be made alive by a God who loved us. And that's exactly what Jesus does. Isn't that amazing? When we talk about heroes and we talk about the fact that Jesus is our great hero, he showed us by living out the example that we should live, how we can be heroes. So Jesus loved people, and he loved people well. And his love should inspire us to care for other people as well. You see, when I go about my day, I could just as easy be concerned with only Chris all of my day. But because of the gospel and because of the change it's made in my heart, it's made me aware of the things around me. And that's made me do some big things to help people and some small things. And so, for example, like if I go in the grocery store, okay, 9 times out of 10 this happens, it's because I'm 6'4", and not a lot of people are, evidently. And so 9 times out of 10, someone in the store is going to ask me to grab something off the top shelf, right? Inevitably, it's the grandma on the aisle who's like 5'2", and she cannot reach, the spaghetti sauce that she wants on the top shelf. And so I can just keep walking, or I can see her standing there and go, hey, would you like me to grab that for you? Oh, yes, that would be so great, so nice of you. Now, listen, I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. What I'm saying is if I'm so focused on my list and what I'm in there to do to get in and get out, I'm not aware of what's going on around me. And so I want to talk to you in just a second about awareness. Okay? You and I need to be aware of what's going on around us. And at the end of the day, here's why. Because heroes care for the people in front of them. Every single day that you wake up and you're breathing and you're here on this earth, God puts people in front of you. He does that in your school. He does that in your job. He does that in your friend group. He does that when you go to the store. He does that when you go to the restaurant or the fast food place or wherever. God puts people in front of you, and heroes care for the people in front of them, no matter if they have a relationship with them or not. Why? Because they're being aware. So I want you to think, what are some places that you go to every day? What are the ordinary places that you find yourself in? How can you look in those ordinary places and find extraordinary ways to help people in those places? Right? They're there. And as a hero, you should be looking for ways, extraordinary ways to help people in ordinary places. Jesus once asked his disciples, don't you have eyes to see? Don't you have ears to hear? He was telling them to be aware, like look around you, see what's going on. And the truth is, friends, we are in a time right now when there is chaos and confusion and people tearing people from limb to limb over Facebook posts and social media posts and videos and all of these different things. And at the end of the day, we're called to love people as Jesus loved people. You want to make a difference, that's where it starts. It doesn't start by you posting a video. It doesn't start by you writing a post and posting it on social media. It starts with you loving people and loving the people around you. Now, I'm not saying those other things are bad, because they are good and that might be what God's caused you to do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we're not loving people. And so to care for the people in front of you, here are 4 words you need to know: awareness, listening, interpretation, and sensitivity. You need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be looking for opportunities for you to show the love of Jesus to the people around you, because heroes care for the people in front of them. Listening. You need to listen to the people in front of you. Don't just hear them. I want you to listen intently so that you can respond in a way that is effective and appropriate to their certain situation. Interpretation. If we want to care for the people in front of us, we have to think about how our words are interpreted, not only by what we meant, but also taking into account how someone else might perceive them. Right? That's what caring for people does. And lastly, sensitive. We've got to be sensitive to the experience and perspectives of the people around us. Because at the end of the day, we're all different. We all have different backgrounds, which informs how we interpret, how we respond, how we do all these things. So before you make an accusation or before you jump to conclusions about somebody, find out their story. Find out why they act the way they do or why they respond the way they do. And at the end of the day, here's what this is all about. Heroes care for the people in front of them. Jesus cared for you so much that he died on the cross for your sins to give you life, to give you a purpose, and to give you the opportunity to care for the people around you. So let's do that. Let's love one another just as Jesus loved us. Thanks. See you next week.